Welcome to the Winner's Playbook. Every winner needs a game plan, and this one's for you.
Welcome back to the Winner's Playbook. I'm Billy, here with Steve Sloan, and today we're diving into one of the biggest relationship debates out there. Should you combine finances with your partner or keep things separate? It's a question that comes up all the time, especially when couples move in together or start planning a future. We'll talk through the pros, cons, how to actually make it work without turning money into a battlefield. Steve, this will be a fun one.
Can't wait, mate. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you back too. No, it's been a while, so this is a tricky one. We're just having a chat about this. It is tricky, especially if our partners are listening, and we don't say what we're what we mean to say, but nevertheless, let's dive into it. And of course, as part of our jobs as advisors, we're talking about this stuff all the time with couples. So what do you think? Like, what are the benefits of combining finances in a relationship?
Look, the benefits, mate. Look, I'd say this as an opening statement. I think there's no set way to do this, and I think for every couple, it's completely okay to be different across the board. I don't think there has to be a set structure couple to couple. There's no right or wrong answer here, is my opening statement to this, because I've seen it work. I've seen it work for like in lots of different ways, right? So combining it, yep, there's benefits of that. You clearly know every transaction if you want to know what's going on. It probably takes away any ambiguity for couples in some way, shape or form. And some people really want that. Some people need that. In other ways though, some people like to keep it separate too. And that's cool. And that works for them. And in some other ways, people like to do both. Like some people have a joint bank account or joint credit cards, whatever that may be, where they joint, see everything going on. And then some people like to have their own accounts too. Some people I see have 10 different bank accounts, and et cetera. So, and I've seen every system work. I don't know about you, Billy. You see a lot of clients. You probably see a lot more clients than me these days. You probably see yourself a lot of every way work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like my thoughts on this are evolving over time too, as I see more and more clients, and even in my own relationship, like I've got kids, there's different factors. Like kids is a huge one, right? If you decide you're going to start a family, it's like we're in this together now. And so part of that is generally combining finances, because now you've got like caregiving's part of it. So it's hard. For example, it's common in a couple where both members of the couple may not be able to go 1,000,000 miles an hour in their career. Once kids come into it, it might be one person going hard on career, one person wants to spend more time with the kids. And if you don't combine your finances at that point, it can make things a bit more complicated.
Yeah, true. And look, I'll sort of on my own circumstances, we do both. We've got joint bank accounts on credit cards. Most of it goes on the credit card, to be honest. So, the credit card gets hammering for a variety of reasons. Most of that is kid stuff and shopping, like Woolworths seems to get a very good run at our household. All the bills, whatever, all the mortgage accounts in a different, like we've got multiple accounts, but you got mortgages in a joint mortgage account, and that's all done over there. Then the credit card takes all the weekly expenses, that's all joint, that's all fine. But then we got our own bank accounts too. And to be honest, I don't want to know what Mim spends her money on. She can do whatever she wants with it. And a lot of things the same the other way too. So for us, that works. That works for us, doing both. It probably makes it easier, especially to do joint in some regards, in some way, shape or form, just because you're on joint application on home loans and joint stuff for all that sort of jazz anyway. So that makes sense. But I think it's also having a bit of independence in a way. To have your own accounts is important. We're all humans and grown-up adults. You should be able to control your own money, right? I don't see the reason why you need to not have it that way. But then that works for us. And I'm not saying that's the right answer for everyone. Absolutely not. Because each their own. So it really is up to the individuals.
Yeah, so that's what I've sort of thought as well. Like, it's not all or nothing. Like, it's not combine everything or keep everything separate, especially if you have children and there's a million other costs that come up with that. So it's like a hybrid model.
Model, yeah.
Like you have goals you work on as a family, like we want a bigger house or whatever,
Yep.
we want to help build up some assets for our kids or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Those things are combined because you've got those shared goals as a couple.
Yeah.
But you also want to have your own, a bit of freedom and your own interests and things that you like to spend money on, which your partner might not give a shit about. So it's like, well, we'll have separate accounts where we can do what we want there.
Yeah.
But we have all these other things we're doing together as a family.
That's right. Yeah. I think, I think there is a little bit of an independence conversation there. You don't. It's not about hiding money or whatever it may be. It's about just an independence thing. I think, to be honest, that's my personal point of view. But I know Josh, that is on here hosting quite a lot, that we know quite well. I think he just does it all in one account, from what I understand, and that's cool. That works for him. So so there's no set agenda here or set structure. I suppose it's just what part of the journey you're on. I'd probably say, in general, I see it. You probably don't want to go too early on joining everything if you're just in an early relationship. I think that's probably the caveat to it all. I think you'd probably be a bit smart around that younger age, maybe. But as you go down the journey of life, as you said, with kids and mortgages and everything else stuck in the middle of it, well, and 90% of your expenses are really like family related, right? Like the mortgage or the eating or medical bills or the amount of insurance we pay, right, is crazy. All that stuff is literally 90% of your expenses, to be frank. So we're talking about 90% of your money is really family expenses anyway, right? So
that's where it doesn't make sense to keep everything completely separate.
No,
because that's like when I don't know if you ever lived in a share house before, many years ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah, if you were still in that situation of like, I paid this, you owe me half of that. Like if you have a family and cars and a house and insurance, like that would just be an absolute nightmare trying to figure out who owes what and all that stuff.
Yeah, it really would be. It really would be. So totally agree.
So are there situations in a couple where it does make sense to keep money separate?
Look, is there situations? Look, I'm sure there is. The situation is if they both want to do it. I think that's the main situation. If they both say, we're happy to keep it separate and just chip in when we need to, the chip in, and I see it sometimes where you got separate bank accounts, and they sometimes have one bank account and regularly send money into that account to then pay that bill, or they send it directly to the institution that's got that bill with. Can work. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of back and like you're on your computer probably every second minute working out transactions of food to send it to.
Admin.
To be honest with you, it probably is too much admin. I don't see that work extremely well when you got lots of transactions. Like I don't know about you, mate, but the amount of transactions coming in and out of bank accounts, there'd be hundreds sometimes. Like wild, bits and it's crazy. Like you don't want to be doing transactions all day every day, so you want to keep life simple. Like I'm a true believer in simplicity. I've got too much going on to not have it simple. I could not have transactions going on that I've got to account for or think about or whatever it may be. So I think all I'd say to all of this is have a bit of faith with a joint account to make it simple for you, because as life gets busier, and then invariably until you retire, it just gets busier and busier and busier. You want to make life as simple and as straightforward for yourself so you can use that time to go do other stuff. And not worry about the transaction stuff. Like, I'll be honest, I used to probably worry about little transactions that were going when we started joint bank accounts. Oh, what's that? What's that? I think as time goes on, you forget all that and don't worry about it, because life's too busy and there's bigger things to worry about than transactions on certain things. So I'd say that, yes, it can work if both parties happen to do that, but I don't know how much time you want to spend on worrying about particular transactions. How about yourself, mate? Have you seen it that, what's the best case scenario in that regard?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. One thing I've realized over time in doing this more and more with clients is and it sort of ties into what we do, if you're investing, right? So if you're building up a share portfolio, investing in a business, you bought a property, putting money into super, whatever it is, if you are investing together and you're sending money into those assets over time, it takes away the obsession over all the little expenses, because to a certain degree, it doesn't matter how many coffees we buy or whatever, because we know we are looking after our future selves. We are building up some assets. Therefore, we don't have to obsess so much over what we're doing day to day, because the bigger picture is taken care of.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas if
That's
all
right.
you've got is a little bit in a savings account, and you're just obsessively trying to build up that savings account, that's where you can get fixated on all the small things, and it just wastes a lot of energy.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, so it is probably a stage of life type of scenario there, right?
Stage of life, exactly.
Stage of life, right? Like, as things go on and things get bigger and there's more things happening and more transactions and more kids and more things you got to do, your brain capacity to deal with that stuff becomes zero, right? So, which is and in general, that's probably the way it goes. You just don't have the capacity to think about it. Simple as that.
Absolutely. And the other thing I've seen, there are some specific situations where you want to keep things separate. And an example is a second relationship. So if you've already had a family and then it doesn't work out and there's divorce, and then you go and find a new partner later in life, it's common then to say, look, I've already built a family and done that, and now we're on round 2. I've gone through divorce and all how terrible that is, and now it's like, no, I just want to keep my own thing separate. This is, our finances are separate. And usually when that happens, like, both members of the couple are on the same page. Like, no, let's just do our own thing here. We'll just chip in one joint account for anything we're sharing. Everything else we'll just keep as is. So there are some situations where that makes more sense, I think.
Totally agree. And I think, and from my experience of dealing with those couples, generally that's understandable. I think the people that are involved in that situation, the younger person knows that that's the score, and that's fair enough. That's a fairly reasonable argument to do so. So I've never seen an issue around that conversation. And look, sometimes that's where an advisor can help, right? Because we can step in and assist in that conversation for the reasoning if we need to. Generally, I don't need to step in and have that conversation, but I think it's an advisor can always step in and help out with those conversations, and that flows into other conversations, right? In that circumstance that we can assist with. But I think that's a fair enough statement. Yeah,
and where there's a wealth disparity too, like if you've got two people meeting, one person's worth a few mil, and the other person's got $5,000 in savings, then you're not necessarily going to just keep everything together.
No, that's right.
So it depends on the circumstances, right?
Yeah, and also, as we were talking before we went online here today, it's also interest, right? I know my wife doesn't have a lot of interest in what's going on in the investment world, so I probably do more of that. So there might, there may be some circumstances where they don't want to really get involved in the transaction anyway, right? Or just not have to deal with it, because when you're doing transactions, if you've got to sign off on stuff all the time, like asset purchases or whatever it may be, some people don't want to actually be involved because they don't want to just have to deal with it. Because these days, the amount of stuff you've got to deal with when you're doing anything regarding investments or anti-money laundering or whatever it may be, there's a lot to get through. And I know some people really don't like filling out paperwork. So if that's the case, then they probably don't need to be on the transaction, to be frank. So there's all that too, right? You've got to work through, and some people have zero interest in even talking about it or thinking about it. Which is cool. And in the couple, there's generally one person that is all over that stuff, and there's one person that isn't. That's the general thing I find. You generally don't get two people really engaged in finances or really want to know about all the transactions. So it's quite interesting. But there's lots of circumstances here. In a nutshell, though, each their own. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's whatever the two people decide to do works. I do believe the hybrid is a good model. I think independence plus having a central spot for all the other stuff of life, which is 90% of your expenses, if you add it up, and then the other 10% do whatever you want with.
Do you know what's interesting? Like on that thing about one member of the couple not being engaged, an interesting thing is we've seen with clients a lot is we might have a client where we don't speak to their partner, we only speak to them. And then we say, look, we're planning for your future here. We do need you to bring your partner so we can discuss what your goals and what you want to achieve and all that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they can become engaged. Once we start talking about, well, if you do these things, that means in 5 years you can retire, or in 10 years you can do this. Like sometimes you do need to sit down and get some level of engagement. Not to say they need to be involved in all the admin and dealing with paying bills and stuff like that, but just on just overall on the family's finances and what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, that's right. Look, my wife's all across our house purchases and stuff, and I'll just explain to her what we're doing and how we're doing it because she can understand it before she signs the documents. But yeah, absolutely, those conversations happen with clients all the time, and that's again job of the advisor is to educate and explain and all that type of jazz. So yeah, that's totally understandable, and that's part of what we do. But yeah, it's yeah, and as you just said, it changes, right? It can change year on year, depending on what's happening. Depending on, there might be other stuff happening in their lives that they don't, want to release that if they've got family stresses or someone's sick. Or, a number of occasions, right? We've got powers of attorney for a reason. Powers of attorney are you're sort of releasing all your responsibility as someone else to deal with it, right? And that can happen too. We deal with a lot of powers of attorney. For instance, if someone moves overseas and they've got bank accounts back here, we're actually dealing with the person that doesn't even have the bank account. We're dealing with the power of attorney. So, that can happen quite often. So there's a range of circumstances here, as I said, and every family's sort of different in some way, shape, or form regarding not only this matter but all their finances for that matter. It just comes down to what's a personal preference.
Okay, let's tackle a tricky one here. What red flags should people look for in each other's money habits?
Oh, I think the big ones are gambling. I think that's a big red flag. If you've got clearly if there's an addiction or a gambling habit or something like that it's probably the bigger ones that are probably like screaming out. Don't get caught up on the small transactions like a bit of shopping here or there. But I think it's the I've only ever seen really bad outcomes when there's gambling involved, because what happens is credit card debts get racked up, and if you've got joint accounts like that, that's when it can really turn bad, because I've seen some really bad outcomes in that situation where all of a sudden a partner has a joint credit card and all of a sudden there's 70 grand owing on a credit card that should never have been there, and they're in the hole. So that is my one big red flag that I've seen go pear-shaped, or in a situation where people aren't good with money. They're just spending it on stuff that just doesn't even make sense, like boats or cars or jet skis. Jet skis are notoriously a sign that someone's wasting money to the nth degree. A complete waste of cash, in my view. And I've seen anyone that's got a jet ski, I go, shit, how bad are their finances, is my first response. And then if you've got joint bank accounts with those type of people, you may be in strife. And just watch what's going on, let's say. It's my red flags there.
Yeah, so gambling, that's a massive one. And then just like vehicles, like just buying really expensive.
Yeah, totally. Really expensive vehicles. I've actually seen this with people that you would the least expected, like some business owners I used to know on the outside looked really successful, squeaky clean, looked like they had lots of money. And under the cover, once I started digging into it, all these flashy cars was just a facade, and behind the scenes, the debts were unbelievable. The interest repayments, they were effectively broke, paying for these massive cars. It looked like they were rich, but under the cover, they were poor as, and one of them in particular went out of business because of it. So it's amazing what you can see outside that. So someone's got a real flashy car, and they haven't done the hard yards to earn it. That's a red flag. And if you're
common. That is so common. If you see a super nice car, I reckon that there's more than a 50% chance that household is not actually in a good financial position. Because anyone can get a big car loan. All you need to do is have a job.
That's right.
Very keen to give you those car loans. Yeah.
You can get a car loan that easy these days, and for a lot of money. Like we're talking like 100 grand easy, pretty much. I don't see many people on low incomes. Like they can get good cars that they can't afford. It's crazy. So yeah, that's a big one. So small assets that depreciate and go to zero, and they all do. Those types of assets, they all do. They all go to zero. So at some stage, you're going to lose all of your money. If you can afford that, you need to be able to afford it, and that is the big red flag. And gambling.
Yeah, and just like if you like with that buying that really nice car. What do you do after that? That's the thing. Like, it's one thing if you build all this wealth and you can easily afford a nice car, go for it. But if you buy that before you can afford it and you just borrow a shitload of money, well, then what's next? Then it's another nice car, you know, like.
That's right. That's right. Like,
Yeah,
I've got
business class flights, a massive mortgage. Like it's just like it's the journey, right? Like you want to be on a good. You don't want to buy those nice things before you've got there.
That's right. You got to get the assets first.
Yeah.
Focus. You got to get the assets first. You got to get the income first, and then get the assets second. Once you build your assets, well, do whatever you want, right? Like that's fine. But if you don't have the assets first, you are completely lost in life, and you'll have a very shit time of life when it comes to money. And you'll either end up going broke or really have zero money when down the track, which is going to be really bad for you and your family. So you have to build assets. After you've done that, and you've got assets to support your income and support your future, well, go for it. Simple.
Yeah, you know what? Warren Buffett still hasn't bought a nice car.
No, isn't he in the same house he was in for the last 60 years or something?
Yeah, we don't need to go to that extent, but yeah, you know, it's like rent the nice car for a day.
Upgrade your house,
Rent the nice car for a day, the novelty will wear off, and then you realise you don't need it.
That's right. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and well, here's an even tough one, I reckon. How do you talk about money with your partner without turning it into an argument?
Don't focus on the small change. Don't focus on the small things. Just let it go. I think that's my key takeaway from my experience. I think just you know, get better at not worrying about the small stuff is the first one. Secondly, probably just you know, don't talk about all the expenses all the time. You know, talk about the fun stuff. You know, like, yeah, we are here. We've got to enjoy life at the same time, right? So, you know, talk about the holidays and talk about the stuff and talk about what you're planning for the future. I think holidays is a big one. I find that always gets people up and about. And then throw that into the argument, okay, maybe we've got to pull back. Look, you know, I went through a really tough patch financially, you know, 7 years ago when the Royal Commission hit. That was really tough. And I had to have a lot of conversations at that stage, really tough conversations actually with my partner. And that wasn't fun at all. And that taught me a lot of lessons. But, you know, talk about the fun stuff as well as what we may need to do over the next couple of months to afford it. So put it all together so it's not all the negative, you know. I think that's important. So yeah, but I'd say my big takeaway there, don't worry about the small change or the small stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Just clients I had just yesterday, young family, money's tight. They're earning really good income and they're just like, and they're really good at budgeting. They're hardcore budgeting, different bank accounts, all that stuff. And they're always asking me, what account should we use for this expense, etc. And it got to a point I said, like, this is going to be a tough period, like cost of living stuffed. You've got a big home loan, but you're in your beautiful family home with a swimming pool. Little kids, daycare fees, it is going to feel like you have no money, but this will not last forever. And we see it with our clients who have teenagers or kids finishing school. All of a sudden, all those expenses can drop off and the home loan's been reduced. And like sometimes it is just going to be tight. Yeah. And as you say, if you obsess over every little expense, it'll just make it worse. And that's when arguments will happen.
Absolutely.
So sometimes you just have to accept things are going to be tight for a period of time. It won't be forever. Make sure we're taking the right actions and not making any silly decisions, and then just push through.
Yeah, that's right. Look, that's a very good point, because like invariably every individual or couple, this is individual or couple, is going to go through patches where things aren't always that good. Whether it's a loss of income or loss of change of job or you're changing roles or, you know, whatever, and there's expenses that come out of nowhere that you didn't expect, or something changed as a business owner, you lost a contract. You know, that's just going to happen. That's just part of life, and you've got to just pick yourself back up and go again. And as you just said, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to be persistent, stay in the game, don't worry about the small stuff, and keep on going. If you keep on going with a positive mindset, you'll get out of it, right? Yeah. So just be patient. Be patient. I think that's the key. I think a lot of people are impatient. Shit, it's stopped. I've got to find a way to fix it overnight. Well, no, you don't need to fix it overnight. Just keep on rolling. It'll fix itself. Just give it some time. Just stay positive, and you'll get there. You know, and I know that probably the most. You know, 7 years ago, I had a really bad time. I got told I was bankrupt, right? So, you know, but I stay positive, keep on going. You'll get yourself out of it. And it took me years, but I got myself out of it. So yeah, I think that's the key takeaway, is do that.
And so the other thing on that, like for you, like say you're in that situation, everything's really tight and you don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it means you do have to make a hard decision. I sell a car, move house, change jobs, whatever it might be.
Yep.
So, and that will have far more impact than saying, all right, we're not allowed to buy Uber Eats for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and so you need to involve your partner in that rather than just thinking about it and losing sleep. You talk to your partner, right, we're in this situation. How do we get out of it? Do we need to make a big change?
Yeah, totally.
We sit with clients all the time. I've had clients where I've looked at their situation. I've said, you're actually going to be stuck in this for some time if you don't make a big change.
Yep.
And I've had clients saying, go and get a new job. Like they weren't earning to their potential. They shopped around, found a higher paying job. Had clients who had 2 cars on leases. They didn't need 2 cars. They sold one, cleared the lease. Like just making some bigger decisions can change the course.
Yeah, and I'd say this.
And if you do that together and you both decide we're going to do this, then that can help alleviate arguments.
That's right. If you've got to make a big call like selling a house, like don't panic. Like you can just reset your life for a couple of years and then go again, right? Like as long as you got time up your sleeve, you can. I've taken many steps back in my finances to go forward again. You know, I've taken losses on properties to go forward again. So it's okay to just suck it up, clear the head, because what it'll do is clear your head, because you're obviously stressed. There's no doubt about it for that reason. There's, clearly if you're going to have to sell something like a big asset, you're going to be stressed. But imagine freeing up your mindset, right? What that will do? Well, that's probably going to be a bigger asset than the house ever was anyway, because if you free your head up, you can then invest that headspace into making more money and going harder again to go bigger, right? So just a couple of steps backwards, okay, if you're going to go 5 steps forward. Yeah.
Instead of redoing the budget spreadsheet and
doing the same number over and over.
We're going to save $10 or $100, whatever.
Totally.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Okay, and so if you're looking at like a couple and they're they're deciding they want to live together and move in together.
Yep.
What's something they really need to agree on financially before they go and do that, move in together?
Look, I think it's just the bigger picture items has probably got to be in the picture there. Who's going to split what expenses and how that's going to look. Generally, most of the time, 99% of the time, couples are on different incomes, so it's just agree on who's got to put in what. That's your first question. It'll generally be the rent or the mortgage, and the cars, right? That's the bigger expenses. So just agree, right? Is it 60/40? Is it 50/50? Everyone gets comfortable with that. Generally, whoever's earning more pays more is the general rule, and I think that's fair. Depending on what sort of relationship it is, of course. And then the second question is, do you do joint bank accounts or not? That's up to you guys to decide as individuals, and that's pretty much about it, in my view.
That's it. All right. Well, I think that's a good note to wind it up on. Any other thoughts, Steve?
No, mate, I think, look, there's no right or wrong answer to any of that. Just agree, keep it transparent, out the open. Each couple should do that. There's no, I don't think there's any right or wrong. Get an advisor involved if you need to, because they can definitely assist in that conversation if you need that. Most of the time I find couples can do it themselves, but if you do need it, they can be there. But in a nutshell, is just go with what's best for the individuals.
Awesome. Well, look, every couple's different, but being on the same page with money makes a huge difference. If this episode helped you think about how to handle your finances with your partner, hit follow, leave us a review, and share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Thanks for tuning into the Winner's Playbook, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, Steve.
Disclaimer. The information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.